Okay, so I want us to proceed to adjusted concept of adjusted present value in a short while. So can we proceed to APV, concept of APV? So adjusted present value is a popular concept. It's a popular concept. Sometimes some people like calling it adjusted net present value. Adjusted present value is a concept which sometimes is referred to as adjusted net present value. This is a very interesting concept because it attempts to marry the investment function and financing function. When we compute net present value in capital budgeting, the aim of establishing the net present value is to make appropriate investment decisions. Of course, a net present value technique is applied for purposes of making an investment decision. In other words, deciding whether to undertake a project or to reject. NPV is a technique used for purposes of making investment decisions. But sometimes a company could go for a loan or borrow money to finance the cost of the project. If a project costs, say, 50 million shillings, that cost of the project can be financed, probably through the issue of debentures, through the issue of new ordinary shares, through going for subsidized loans, going for other normal loans, relying on retained earnings, and so forth and so on. That's one issue that we don't take into account. How the cost of the investment is financed. How the cost of the investment is financed. So normally we compute net present value, you find the answer is positive, and you say accept. NPV is negative, reject. But we disregard one very important issue, that the cost of the asset can be financed from various sources. Now this brings in the financing function. And that's what I'm saying, that the concept of adjusted present value interconnects or attempts to marry the investment function and financing function. It interconnects the two. That NPV, which is worked out for purposes of making an appropriate investment decision, is adjusted for the financing issues. If the cost of the asset is to be financed by raising money from various sources, then there are other issues that we need to incorporate in this analysis. In other words, we need to adjust the net present value to take into account the financing issues. And that's what I'm saying here, that APV is also known as adjusted net present value. It's a popular valuation model, which basically is an approach that can be used to evaluate potential capital investments. Adjusted present value is preferred to NPV under certain circumstances. One of the reasons why APV is preferred to NPV is where the side effects of borrowing to finance a proposed investment activity are to be incorporated in the analysis. The side effects of borrowing. If you borrow money and you incur interest, for example, that interest is a tax allowable expense and therefore will attract a tax shield benefit in the form of interest tax shield. That interest tax shield benefit becomes an item, a financing related item that can be used to adjust the net present value. So where the side effects of borrowing to finance a proposed investment activity are to be incorporated to, where a potential capital investment is financed partly by the use of normal debt and partly by the use of loans which are subsidized. Yeah, so the cost of the asset can be financed by the normal debt. If you go for a loan and the market rate is 18%, that's a normal loan. But you may also go for another loan whose rate is subsidized. The market rate is 18%, but you obtain a loan at say 15%. If the market rate is 18% and the loan is granted to you at 15%, the 3% below the normal rate is a subsidy. So if you go for a loan at a rate which is lower than the market rate, that loan is referred to as a subsidized loan. And if then that were to be the case, then you end up saving on interest costs. If you obtain a loan at a rate lower than the market rate, you end up saving on interest costs. But because interest is a tax deductible item, there is a foregone interest tax shield. One side you will save on interest costs, the other side you will forego the interest tax shield, and therefore you have to net off. I've saved X, I've foregone Y in terms of interest tax shield, and the net effect is X minus Y. The other possible reason is where a capital investment is financed partly using internal equity and partly by the use of external equity. Internal equity are reserves. External equity is money raised through the issue of ordinary shares. Number 4, which I think again is very, very important, where the net operating cash flows of our capital investments are to be discounted using a different discounting rate from the one used in discounting benefits arising from borrowing debt finance to finance the project. This is very, very important. One unique thing about APV is that when establishing the net present value, the discounting rate you use in discounting the operating cash flows and discounting terminal cash flows is not the same as the discounting rate that you used in discounting other benefits arising from borrowing to finance the cost of the project. Now, these other benefits arising from borrowing can take the form of the interest tax shield, can take the form of the after-tax cost savings on loans which are subsidized. Either the interest tax shield each year or the after-tax savings, the after-tax cost savings on loans which are subsidized. Now, if those benefits are to be enjoyed each year, maybe for a period which is defined, or each year in perpetuity, then we need to know their present values. So the present value of the interest tax shield and the present value of the after-tax cost savings on loans which are subsidized shall be established using the risk-free rate of return as a discounting rate. So all other benefits arising from borrowing to finance the cost of the project, like interest tax shield, like the after-tax cost savings on loans which are subsidized, are discounted at the risk-free rate of return. Where the risk-free rate of return is not specified, it's assumed that the debt is risk-free. And therefore, the pre-tax cost of debt, the after-tax cost of debt is applied as a discount rate. Now, for purposes of computing the net present value, the operating cash flows, terminal cash flows are discounted at the cost of equity, are discounted using the cost of equity of unlevered farm. So when computing the net present value, the operating cash flows and the terminal cash flows are discounted using the cost of equity of unlevered farm. Now, we apply the cost of equity of a levered farm because the assumption here is that a farm, before raising the funds to undertake the project, the assumption is that the farm was unlevered. If that is the case, then weighted average cost of capital of unlevered farm is equal to cost of equity of that farm. I've already told you from my previous discussions that if a farm is unlevered, then weighted average cost of capital is the cost of equity. Now, in this case, we shall use the framework of the capital asset pricing model to establish the cost of equity of unlevered farm. And this is what I'm saying here. Cost of equity of unlevered farm is equal to risk-free rate plus beta coefficient of equity of unlevered farm, expected return of the market portfolio minus risk-free rate. Using the framework of the capital asset pricing model, we can find the cost of equity of unlevered farm. Since we are assuming that before raising the funds to undertake the project, the company was unlevered, then the weighted average cost of capital of this farm shall be equal to the cost of equity, which shall be established using the framework of the capital asset price model. So when computing net present value of a project, the base case NPV, the discounting rate, is the cost of equity of unlevered farm. All other benefits arising from borrowing, like interest tax shield and savings from subsidized loans, are discounted at the risk-free rate of return. And I've said that in the absence of the risk-free, then the assumption is that debt is risk-free, and therefore the after-tax cost of debt shall be used as a discounting rate. This is a point that I'm saying here, where the net operating cash flows of a capital investment are to be discounted using a different discounting rate from the one used in discounting benefit arising from borrowing debt finance to finance a project. Usually, net operating cash flows of a capital investment will be discounted using cost of equity of a levered farm, which is normally captured using the framework of the capital asset pricing model. So remember, unlevered, cost of equity of unlevered. In that case, the independent variable is bet of equity of unlevered farm. So this cost of equity of unlevered farm, risk-free rate, beta, coefficient of equity of unlevered farm. Now, the Hamada model, the Hamada model by Robert Hamada provides a framework upon which to capture the cost, capture the beta. To capture the beta, not cost. To capture the beta coefficient. The beta coefficient of equity of unlevered farm. The Hamada model is applicable in establishing the beta coefficient of equity of a levered farm. According to Robert Hamada, the relationship exists between the farm's capital structure and the systematic risks. The higher the amount of debt capital in the farm's capital structure, the higher the systematic risk and the vice versa. The systematic risk, of course, are measured by beta coefficient. The relationship between capital structure and systematic risk is expressed as follows. This model, we have applied it, we are getting the optimal capital structure, Buka, Leon, Apple. But please take note that when I was going through determination of the optimal capital structure, what I used is this one here. Beta of equity of a levered farm. In the computation of the optimal capital structure, we were looking for beta coefficient of equity of a levered farm, given the unlevered beta, given the other variables. But now in this case, under the concept of APV, what we shall be looking for is the beta coefficient of unlevered. Model Missouri, if you divide these variables, if you make beta coefficient of equity the subject of the formula, if you make the beta coefficient of equity the subject of this formula, if you express beta coefficient of equity in terms of the rest, that is what we find. So when you're going through the concept of APV, you will be given beta of a levered farm. You work backward. Take that beta of a levered farm, divide by 1 plus market value of debt or a proportion of debt, market value of equity or a proportion of equity, you adjust to find the beta of equity of unlevered farm. Once you have found that, then we move to the capital asset pricing model. This one here. This one you have to capture using the Hamada model. Then you use CAPM to find the cost of equity of unlevered farm. Okay, so that's what the other very, very, very important circumstance. And I think I've explained here. So the other benefit that arise from borrowing to acquire the capital investment, such as the interest tax shield benefits, the annual after-tax savings or loans which are subsidized, shall be discounted at the risk-free rate of return. Where the risk-free rate is not stated, where the risk-free rate of return is not specified, it's assumed that debt is risk-free. Debt is risk-free. And hence, the cost of debt. The cost of debt shall be applied as a discounting rate. As a discounting rate. So when establishing the base case NPV, I've already said we use the cost of equity of a levered farm. The assumption is that the farm is unlevered, in which case the weighted average cost of capital is taken to be equal to the cost of equity. But the other benefits arising from borrowing is counted at risk-free. Where a farm incurs, the other condition in which APV is preferred to the normal NPV is where a farm incurs flotation costs and discount costs when issuing ordinary shares. When issuing ordinary shares or issuing debentures to raise capital to finance the cost of the asset. So you guys are aware that the issue of ordinary shares and the issue of debentures attract flotation costs. And sometimes these issues can be discounted, giving rise to discount costs. And therefore, the flotation costs and discount costs becomes financing costs. By the way, flotation costs and discount costs are incurred in time zero. You're thinking of investing now, and you're thinking of raising the funds now. You'll incur flotation costs and discount costs now, meaning, therefore, that you don't have to discount flotation and discount costs. The other thing is that flotation costs and discount costs are tax deductible and may attract a tax shield. So you need to establish the after-tax costs, or rather capture the tax shield and net off from those costs. But in an exam situation, the examiner will be very specific. Flotation costs, discount costs are tax deductible, or flotation costs and discount costs are not tax deductible. If that were to happen, then of course go by what the examiner is saying. Where it's not specified, then assume that flotation costs and discount costs are tax deductible and capture tax shield on that. Now, once all those have been established, then we work out the adjusted present value using this formula. Base case NPV, this is the normal NPV, plus present value of the interest tax shield benefit, plus the present value of savings on subsidies, loans which are subsidized, minus present value of the issue cost. But we shall not discount issue costs because those are incurred in time zero. So where APV is positive, the project is accepted. Otherwise, the project should be rejected. I've worked out a small illustration here. If you check your pilot paper, September 2015, question number what? Oh, I didn't indicate. Question number? Could you please go to your pilot paper? Tell me, I don't have my question paper with me. Question number? Are you guys there? Question
number 1.
Pilot paper of September 2015, question number?
1.
Question 1.
Yes, question 1.
1A or 1B? Question 1.
Yes.
What does it say? Wacha mtu mmoja atusomee sasa, hata mimi nipumzike kidogo. Mtu mmoja asome pole pole. Mtu mmoja atusomee hiyo swali pole pole, tafadhali, as we interpret. Kama mtaki kusoma, muache nipumzike ndio nisome baadaye. Mnipatie dakika 5 nipumzike ndio nisome.
The managers
Okay, move on.
The managers of Kawaida Limited are investigating a potential shillings 25 million investment. The investment will be a diversification away from existing mainstream activities into the food manufacturing industry. 6 million of the...
Just pause there, Gabriel. This is a diversification away from existing mainstream activities into the food manufacturing industry. Remember, this is a company that is operational. There is their mainstream activities they're being involved in, but they are thinking of diversifying the operations into the food manufacturing industry, where they will spend 25 million shillings. The cost to be incurred to facilitate this diversification activity is 25 million. Okay, see how the cost is financed. Move on, Gabriel.
6 million.
So the point I'm making here, just a minute, Gabriel. The point I'm making here, the project under evaluation is a diversification into the food manufacturing industry. Any data relevant relates to diversification into the food manufacturing, not mainstream activity. We are not interested in the mainstream activity. What we are interested in is this diversification into the food manufacturing industry. Information about that is only information which is relevant. Now, see how the 25 million is financed. Continue. Continue. From 6 million.
6 million. 6 million of the investment will be financed by internal funds, 10 million, by a rights issue, and 9 million by long-term loans.
Just pause there a bit.
The investment.
Just pause. Go slowly. Yeah? 6 million of the investment is financed by internal funds. This looks like reserves, isn't it? Retained earnings. Yes. 10 million through a right issue. The company will issue new ordinary shares to raise 10 million, 9 million from long-term loans. What is the total? Is the total 25 million? 6 plus
yes.
10, that is 16 plus 9. So that is how the cost is being financed. Move on.
The investment is expected to generate pre-tax cash of approximately 5 million per year for a period of 10 years.
Just a minute there.
The residual value.
Just a minute. Pre-tax, before tax cash flows of approximately 5 million per year for 10 years. So you have to be careful there. This is pre-tax cash flows. Continue.
The residual value at the end of the 10-year forecast is to be 5 million after tax.
That is a salvage
as
value.
The investment.
So this project,
as the investment is in the area. As the investment is in the area that the government wishes to develop, a subsidized loan of 4 million out of the total 9 million that is available. This will cost 2% below the company's normal cost of long-term debt finance, which is 8%.
Just pause there.
Kawaida Limited
pause there.
Better.
No, just pause there, Gabriel. Just pause there. As the investment is the area that the government wishes to develop, a subsidized loan of 4 million out of the total of 9 million. You can see from the question, 9 million of the cost of the project is debt finance. 9 million by long-term loans. But you're being informed that because the investment is the area the government wishes to develop, there's a subsidy. Out of the 9 million, 4 million is a loan which is subsidized. The other 5 million is a normal loan. So this 4 million is subsidized loan. So that means the long-term loan is broken down into two. We have a loan which is subsidized of 4 million and a normal loan of 5. And then the question says, this loan which is subsidized will cost 2% below company's normal long-term debt finance of 8%. But I don't think these rates are really should be much higher. So that means the subsidized loan is acquired at what rate?
6%.
Should be 6%. So there's a saving of 2%. There's a saving of 2% each year. That is a subsidy. Yeah? Okay. Yeah. Gabriel, move on.
Kawaida Limited's equity beta is 0.85, and its capital structure comprises of 60% equity and 40% debt. By geared equity beta in the food manufacturing industry is 1.2, with a capital structure of 50% equity and 50% debt by market value.
Just pause there a bit. You see, the examiner has given you a lot of information. Some is irrelevant. Kawaida Limited's equity beta is 0.5. Its capital structure, 60% equity. That is the firm's overall figures. But if you look at this question, in the opening paragraph, it is very clear. It's a diversification into the food manufacturing industry. So, ukiangalia paragraph, the only information which is relevant in this question is information related to the food manufacturing industry. This information about the company is irrelevant. So the average ungeared equity beta in the food manufacturing industry is 1.2. And the capital structure, 50% equity, beyond irrelevant. Because the project under study is a diversification into the food manufacturing industry. The other information about the company, that one is irrelevant. Continue.
The risk-free rate of return is 5.5 per annum, and the return of the market portfolio is 12% per annum. Issue costs are estimated to be 1% for debt financing, excluding the subsidized loan, and 4% for equity financing. These costs are not tax allowable, and the corporation tax is 30%.
Okay. Now, issue costs are 1% for debt financing, excluding subsidized loan. So this means it is based on the normal loan. How much is the normal loan? How much will be raised from the normal loan?
5 million.
5 million.
5 million.
It means that the issue costs will be 1% of 5 million, isn't it?
Yes.
And the 4% for equity financing. Which equity? You know, the cost is financed using two types of equity. There is internal equity of 6 million and external equity of how much? 9.
9.
Are there flotation costs on internal equity? Yeah, kuna.
No.
You cannot incur flotation costs on internal equity. So obviously, it should be based on this rights issue, isn't it? Money raised through the issue of ordinary shares of 9 million, 4% of 9 million. Estimate adjusted present value. Comment upon the significance, the circumstance under which APV is a better method than NPV. I think they've already said that. So adjusted present value is base case NPV plus present value of the interest tax shield plus present value of savings on subsidies minus present value of the issue cost. Working number 1. So basically there are 4 workings here. First working is to look for the base case net present value. Second working is to look for the present value of the interest tax shield benefits. Third working is the present value of the after-tax savings on loans which are subsidized. The fourth working is present value of the issue cost. Working number 1, base case NPV. This is the normal net present value that will be determined using the cost of equity of unlevered firm as a discounting rate. So I've already told you that the base case NPV is captured using the cost of equity of unlevered firm as a discounting rate. And this cost of equity of unlevered firm, you capture using the capital asset pricing model. So cost of equity of a levered firm is risk-free rate plus beta of equity of a levered firm, expected return of the market portfolio minus risk-free rate. Recall that using the Hamada model, the beta of equity of a levered firm is given by that. Are we given levered equity beta in the food manufacturing industry? Hapana, hapana, hapana. Hapa kuna makosa. Tafadhali mbadilishe hapo geared. Mbadilishe hapo The average geared equity beta in the food manufacturing industry, geared is levered. Tafadhali mbadilishe hapo Levered. Sio unlevered Have you adjusted that? FM. FM, umeona hapo Mtu anaitwa FM.
Nimeona.
FM, kwa nini wewe utaki umejiita FM? Jina yako ni nani?
Fidelis.
Dennis. Unajiita FM kwa nini sasa? Kwa nini unajiita FM bwana?
Hizo ni majina zangu zote.
FM?
Yeah.
Hapana. Ungependa kujua jina. Gibson Karara.
Fidelis Musioka.
Gibson. Yes, mwalimu.
Tuko pamoja hapo?
Yeah, tuko pamoja.
Have you seen the error that I've corrected? There was an error in the question,
Yeah.
Wale kidogo wamelala kidogo, tafadhali mwamuke. This is the average levered equity beta, 1.2, and that's where we even the capital structure to adjust it back into the unlevered beta. So 1.2 is the levered equity beta. Ningeweka nilishindwa kutype hiyo over. Haikai mzuri sana. Kai mzuri sana. Hiyo working yangu haikai mzuri sana. (1.2) divided by haikai mzuri sana surely. Inafaa kuwa kitu kama hiyo Ngoja kidogo. Unajua some of us hatujui mambo ya typing sana. Turuia nasema namna gani kwa Kiswahili? Si Kiswahili mnasemanga aje? Ngoja kidogo. Haiendi mzuri sana hapo kidogo tafadhali Sio kama hivyo inaenda mzuri. Unaona hivyo zinaenda mzuri kidogo. Inaonekana sasa kidogo si ndio? Iko inakaa mzuri. So this is the levered beta in the food manufacturing industry divided by 1 plus proportion of debt is 0.5, proportion of equity is 0.5, 1 minus T. Hebu confirm kama this is the unlevered equity beta. Is the unlevered equity beta or asset beta 0.71?
Yes, 0.71.
Hii inaitwa unlevered. This is the unlevered equity beta. Equity beta, also known as asset beta. I remember sometimes back when we were marking exams at Casimir, so a fellow brought an argument that was not making sense. He didn't understand that This unlevered equity beta is the asset beta, fortunately. And we had to argue for a while. So that is 0.71. Now we go to CAPM to find the cost of equity of a levered farm using the capital asset price model. Using the capital asset price model, determine the cost of equity of the unlevered farm as follows. I want my book to be very self-explanatory. Ni mtu akijisomea inakuwa rahisi. Hii kitabu mtanisaidia ku market kweli? Nyinyi mtakuwa mmemaliza mmeenda. Yeah, so we, oh, my battery is low. Sikuwa nimeweka hapa, tutasimwa mara moja hapa. So we use the capital asset price model. Hiyo CAPM ndio hii hapa juu. Hii mambo ya CAPM mnaijua You guys are now experts in CAPM, si ndio? Ama bado kuna shida na hii CAPM? That's one model you have to be very careful. You can see when I was going through CAPM in class, I told you the application cuts around many areas which you can see. So we bring in that model. Risk-free rate tumepewa ngapi? What's the risk-free rate?
5.5.
5.5. Ndio nimesubstitute. Unlevered equity beta 0.71, si ndio?
Yes.
Return of the market portfolio, is it 12?
12%.
Huh?
Yes, 12%.
Return of the market portfolio is 12, minus risk-free rate. Is the cost of equity 10%? Angela, take it out. Watch it. Can you confirm that the cost of equity of a levered farm is 10%?
$10.12.
Say 1-2 kweli, kusema kweli. Tusaidia mahali kweli, is to round off to 10%. With your permission, madam, can we round off? Let's round off to 10%.
10%.
Ama nimefanya makosa, tutumie tu 10.12. Inaomba, we round off, Yeah, people from Tanzania say tunaomba, si ndio? Na wa Kenya, mtu anasema tunaomba kweli? Nataka hiyo task, leta task haraka. Enda huko Tanzania, nakwambia naomba task. The attitude of Kenyans, mtu anakanyaga wewe mguu na naona hiyo sio kitu. The impunity culture in Kenya. Mtu anakunyang'anya girlfriend na naona hiyo ni kawaida tu. Si ndio? Gibson. Gabriel, ni kweli?
Aje.
Unanyang'anya rafiki yako girlfriend unaona ni kawaida tu. The impunity of Kenyans, Mwingine ananyang'anya mwenzake boyfriend anaona ni kawaida tu. Mtu anagonga gari yako, hii ni kawaida tu kwa barabara, Okay, so the 10% is the discount rate we are going to use, cost of equity of a levered farm. Now, what are we given here? Cash flows related to this investment are which ones? I think in the opening paragraph we were told the investment will generate pre-tax cash flows of 5 million per year for a period of 10 years. So we need to work out the after-tax cash flow. That looks like 3.5 million, eh? Isn't it? Pre-tax, 5 million. So less tax, tunapata the after-tax, which is 3.5, eh? Nicole?
Yes, 3.5.
Each year for how many years? 10 years. That's an annuity, isn't it? Now, do you think we need to account for depreciation tax sheet in establishing the net operating cash flow? Is the question telling us whether the asset is depreciating? Or rather, let me ask this. Do we know the method of providing for depreciation of this asset? No idea. Do we even know that this is an asset that depreciates? The question was saying investigating a potential 25 million project, which is a diversification. Do we expect this diversification to depreciate? Huh? What do you think? Ala, watu wako hapa ama wamelala? So I've disregarded the issue of the tax shield. So just work out the after-tax cash flow that becomes 3.5 million, year 1 up to year 10. And there's a terminal cash flow of 5 million. So tunakimbia haraka, tunapata NPV. 3.5 million times present value of the annuity factor 10. The cost of equity of unlevered farm is 10 plus. Terminal cash flow is 5 times. Present interest factor 10% minus initial cost. Could you please confirm that this NPV is minus 1.5664 million? The base case NPV.
It's correct.
Is it correct?
Mm.
So at this stage, we could have rejected this project, Sendio?
Yes.
Lakini kabla to reject, let's adjust that NPV to incorporate the financing side effects. One of these working that we could use to adjust the base case NPV is establishing the sum of the present value of the interest tax shield. Company is going for loans to finance part of the cost of the project. And we were told the total amount from long-term loans is 9 million, comprising of 5 million is a normal loan obtained at 8%. 4 million is a loan which is subsidized at 6%. Do we agree that the interest of the normal loan is 0.4 million? 8% times 5 million, ngapi? 0.4 million. Interest on the normal loan?
Yes, 400,000.
0.4 million.
6% times 4 million. Is that interest on the subsidized loan? Huh? 6% of 4 million. That is 0.24 million,
Yeah.
Annually. So the total interest payable annually is 0.4 plus 0.24, that is 0.64 million. Total interest, Is it 0.64 million per annum?
Yes.
Now, even though I'm saying here per annum for 10 years, was that clear in the question? Were we told the term of the loan? Anywhere, ukisoma hapa, hii 9 million debt. About naambiwa, out of the 9 million, 5 million is normal loan, 4 million is subsidized. These loans are repayable over what period of time? This question is not clear on that issue. Fikiri mnaona hivyo, eh? The question is not clear on the term of the loan. I've merely assumed that the term of the loan is equal to the term of the investment. I've assumed. I think that is something that we need to clarify, isn't it? Assumption. Let me say, it has been assumed. It has been assumed that the term of the loan is equal to the useful life of the project. Useful life of the investment. Of the investment activity being evaluated. The question is not clear on the term of the loan. So we have assumed that the term of the loan is equal to useful life of the investment activity.